we haven't done a podcast for a while, right? It's been we're a few months overdue. But
yes,
it's not for a lack of either of us not being, it's not for a lack of things to do on both of our ends. I think a good place to probably start off is to share what you've been into. Not get lost in the weeds of the technicalities of it, because we're speaking with a lot of our members that are Amorati, and they're quite updated with many of the things that you're doing. But like in the terms of the Zan and Jordan Show conversation that we were having last year about the future of culture, this kind of fourth turning type thing that we are pretty into, I would say now, future of art, consequences for a beautiful, meaningful life. Like broad strokes, what have you been doing for the last 3 months? What have you been absorbed
well,
in?
3 months is a good way of saying it, because I've been completely heavily immersed in technology and emerging technology. By that I mean what's going to, without getting into too much detail, but the idea, the underlying concept of decentralization and blockchain technology, which is underpinning an infrastructure that's being built as we speak, whether people know it or not, underneath a lot of things. So obviously finance, right? Cryptocurrency and stuff like that, but social media with things like bitclout, which is a new thing. Clubhouse, which is a new social media audio gathering thing that people have embraced. I'm trying to understand all this new technology in the context. A year and a half ago, you and I did our first podcast. I was in Florence in January. And we were sitting in this question of what hath God wrought? What is shifting in this world of art and architecture? And we went to the end of we discovered, I think we're feeling that we've come to the end of something, and it was just you were just paddling and keeping in one place in art, and and art conversation, I guess you could say. And art, I mean that in the broad strokes, writing, the whole thing, obviously, including an artistic way of living. And so you and I have explored in this podcast for over a year these themes and what is next, what is emerging, and I think, so what I've been sitting in the last 3 months is the dawning awareness, or maybe the sudden awareness, that the next phase of artistic expression is technology based. And by that I mean, imagine this: there are young people alive today, and I don't say kids because no, they're 21 years old potentially, that are saying, well, what do you know, Jordan? You were born in the 1900s. They say that to the parents. What do you know? You're born in the 1900s. Why should I listen to you? You're born in so this generation that is coming up, that is born post 2000, are going to be tuned into a technological, they're the wave of a technological revolution, which informs art, poetry, everything. Everything's going to evolve. It's going to be underpinned with that. Unless you destroy electricity, it's not going to go away. So I think it's as robust and culture changing, in fact, more robust and culture changing than any time in history, including the printing press was, Gutenberg's printing press, which was equivalent to the internet as the way it changed the world, But the internet and the future of these things, there's a lot of people who are decrying this and saying, well, for instance, digital art is not real art, and they're up in arms about it because it's not plastic art, which is, you put the paint on the canvas, you sit on, on plan and paint, you know, the river going by, and it's not true art because of that.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I'm very analog. I came from the forest, man. I'm not, you know, I'm pre-internet. My young days were pre-internet, and yet there's
Well into the
something.
1900s.
Yeah, I was born in the 1900s, but I really feel that there's something magical happening. That we won't understand, but the post 2000-year-olds are going to understand and think, well, it's obvious.
I think it makes complete sense, and it's obvious already. Maybe it's kind of crazy that we didn't articulate it before, but it's like,
I don't think we saw it before, Jordan. We were sitting in.
When we're talking.
Go ahead.
When we're talking about the historical movements of all of arts, but also historical movements of how men and women related to each other romantically, right? What is love? Yeah. The conception of love, the underpinning paradigm, or the kind of raw material underneath all of those things, was the means of production, right? So you
That's right.
say the printing moment in time where everything changed, modernism and the Industrial Revolution, another moment in time where everything changed. Now we've got this technological thing. So it's like, what is art? Well, art has to be born on top of a particular paradigm, and now everything is digital, right? So love also, and that poses a lot of existential problems, like, i.e., is my intimate partner a piece of technology for me in subtle or not so subtle ways? Do I look at them as a program that I can meddle and fix or relate to? But like the entire kind of conceptual, cognitive baseline thing that we're living in is going through a revolution, right? Possibly one of the ultimate biggest revolutions ever. So it's not a surprise that everything would switch with it.
Yeah.
But the extent of it is gnarly. And the maturity, actually, it's not like we're playing Pong anymore, or sending, have an email buddy in some foreign country where you just get an email through your Hotmail account, AOL account once a week or something like that. And I was having a conversation with a friend last night about NFTs, right? And he was skeptic, non-believer. And I'm like, I don't know the future of this thing. I think
born in the 1900s. What does he know?
Well, he's more millennial than I am, that's for sure. But he was saying, I don't know about these NFTs. Like, why would somebody want to own a tweet, right? Because you can buy Jack Dorsey's first tweet. It was sold, and there's a number of people's first tweets that were sold. He's like, I would buy a John Lennon guitar, or I'd buy the original thing that he wrote the thing, because there is a piece of history. Yeah. He was in India in this ashram, and there's this notepad, and it's got you can smell the hair follicles and the DNA on this thing. Like, that's got meaning. Or you go into the Hard Rock Cafe and it's memorabilia, signed Jimi Hendrix guitars lying in the walls and all that kind of stuff. And you walk in there and you're like, this is history in here. But it's only history if you grew up in that paradigm where you're 10 years old and these are the biggest artists in the world who your parents revere, whose music you get weaned on. But if you're born in like 2001 and your early memories were like, yeah, parents are on the phone checking Twitter and all these things, like the very big images that are kind of branded into your psyche are not moon landing or, punk rock stuff, or acid house in the north of England and Ibiza. But it's like, the first tweet. Wow, someone made a tweet today. You grew up in that generation. It's like, like one day I aspire to own that first tweet in a way that could be mine, in a way that someone would want to own, like a Woodstock guitar, or this is the shirt that such and such a footballer threw out in the World Cup final, Maradona's autographed top or whatever. So it sounds insane to anyone brought up in an analog world, but people are brought up within the confines of a digital paradigm. That's the difficult thing for us more curmudgeons to wrestle with and understand, I think.
Yeah, and it's strange. I find it amusing that especially since with my wilderness background, you think that I would be completely like conservatively throwing back to an era, but I don't. I'm wide-eyed in wonder. I think this is a remarkable time in history, and I think we're seeing the birth of something. Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I mean, we would have comic books like Thor and Spider-Man and stuff. And I just, we loved our comic books. Jack Kirby and Stan Lee were, the creators of this kind of thing. And more than a Jimi Hendrix guitar, something like a single cell frame from one of those original Thor comics, would be something I would covet or like to, because it has a nostalgia to me, and if it was a digital thing, but it came from, Jack Kirby directly, that would be pretty meaningful to me. It's I don't know. There's a lot of head scratching for me and for you and for certainly everybody else. I mean, everybody's trying to understand the concept of NFTs in this digital world, or in this new world. But the more you ponder it, the more it makes sense.
Maybe you could give a 1 minute. So say someone's been watching our show or listening to our podcast for a year, like in 1 minute, what is Clubhouse? The big three of the year so far. What is Clubhouse? What are NFTs? I would say that might be the biggest one for me. What is bitclout? Which might be the most pervasive one for all of us.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Well, let me start with this concept of NFTs, which hit us first. NFTs. I think there was the concept of, which is non-fungible token. Non-fungible means it's not interchangeable with anything else. If you have $5 and I have $5 and we switched it, it makes no difference. They're fungible. That's basically the essence of it. So an NFT is non-fungible token. So something that's non-fungible would be, I have a Picasso on my wall and there's only one. There's only one that he ever did of that, girl picking her nose or whatever it was. That I got it right there. So it's non-fungible. It can't be traded for another Picasso or another painter or, or a box of tools that they don't match. So the idea of non-fungible tokens is this idea that you can attach that non-fungibility to a piece of digital expression. Could be a video, a piece of music. As long as it's digital, you can say that we're going to attach a token to it on the blockchain. That means that is directly connected to that piece of art, and it's non-interchangeable with anything else. So that's very simplistic and explain like I'm five type of thing. And we think, well, that makes no sense, because why would I buy the original NFT or the original image JPEG when Jordan can copy it? I can display it on my website. I bought this NFT from Jack Kirby. It's Thor, and I'm the only one that owns the original. But you copy it on your website, and you make 1 million copies, and you put them out there, and there's millions of copies that are identical, pixel to pixel, ones and zeros to ones and zeros. They're identical. Take out compression. So you lose that single Picasso element. That's the idea, and that's what people don't understand. But I think what we are forgetting to realize, maybe I can quickly say this. I'll try to do it as fast as I can, but it's complex.
Yeah.
I was in a clubhouse room, which I'll explain in a second, and I was with a guy, I can't remember his name.
Brave new world, if you're not keeping track already.
I know. I'm sorry if I'm going over everybody's head.
Hold on for dear life.
Hold on for dear life. And I was in this room.
We're living in now.
I was in this room listening to a conversation on Clubhouse with the founder of Wired magazine, and Wired magazine has had its finger on the digital pulse since the 80s, early 80s. They've always been reporting on the newest trends, the newest whatever. And this guy was the founder, and he said, "What's remarkable about," and he gets it immediately. He understood that, and he's 60 something years old. He said, "I get it 100%, because our civilizations, our culture has always had this concept of ownership. This is my club when I'm a caveman. This is my club. This is my bowl. This is my piece of land. This is my cave, which evolved into, this is my hunting grounds. This is my This is my artwork. We've always possessed things. Okay. We've always had this culture, or this concept of owning something has meaning. And if you think about it, 25 years ago, everybody that you knew had a line of DVDs up on a shelf, movies, and they had a CD rack with all the CDs. In other words, that's the music I purchased and own. I bought the Beatles album. I bought, Metallica, and it's right there. I own that piece of music my version of it, because I bought it and I paid for it, and it's sitting right there. And there's my movies over there that I bought and paid for, and I'm storing them. I'm containing them. I own those. We've had that forever. And what this guy from Wired said was, in the last 20 years, that concept of ownership has completely, we didn't even see it. We didn't even notice it. The concept of ownership dissipated quietly and was replaced with the concept of access. So we no longer own our movies, but we have access to movies. We no longer own CDs and records and record players, because we have access to those things now. So it's changed from ownership to access. In fact, ownership is a liability. If I move my apartment, I have to box up all these DVDs and pack it around and find a way to store them and need space for all this stuff. But access has replaced that. And if you think about what phones have done, they've replaced entire volumes of gadgets. When I was a young man in the 80s, I'm buying a stereo and a TV and an alarm clock and a calendar and a stopwatch and a video camera, but that's all been condensed into one little tiny gadget. That's why when people say, "Oh man, the new iPhone is $1,300, what a ripoff," I'm thinking, are you kidding me? As a young man with no money, I was spending $10,000, $15,000 on gadgets, because and it's all been replaced. So
yeah.
So in other words, that's exactly the same thing. That's access. I don't need to have a stereo because I have access to it. I don't need to have a calendar. I don't need to buy a calendar anymore because I have access to it. And it's with me everywhere I go. I don't need a map anymore because I have access to it. So this concept of access has shifted the consciousness of the world, and we never saw it coming. And now what NFTs are reintroducing is the idea that we can own something again. We can go back to the concept of ownership without the storage and without the hassle, et cetera. And it's scratching an itch that we didn't know we had, which is we've always had this feeling that this is mine. This is my cup. This is my cup. I take it when I go to summer camp. I want to take my own cup, and we have this urge in us to own something, to say, this is mine. And when in this age of access, we've shifted into, or we're shifting back to this concept that I can say that I own this. And if Jordan is an artist that I adore, I like his work, and you create a digital piece of art and said, this is, I Jordan created this, here it is, I want to sell it for $100. Me, even though somebody could copy it, but there's some part of me that wants to have a connection with the original guy named Jordan. Mm-hmm. She wants to have that bonded, circle across the digital metaverse. And so I want to spend that $100. Number one, because I want to own this piece of art that he personally created. Number two, because I want to support Jordan, the artist. So my $100 is giving good value to me because I'm getting this piece of art, but I'm also supporting him so he makes a second piece of art,
So yeah, I think this is the crucial thing to understand, because I can make a JPEG, right? Or I could make a PDF or an EPUB,
yeah,
more likely, which you can download for free or copy off your buddy, or just copy and paste off the internet and turn to it as many times as you want. Or you can pay good money for the same thing that you could already download and copy for free.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to bottle that thing. Like, what is the thing that wants to own, in a way?
There's some part of our human, I don't know, anthropologists have to figure this out, or sociologists or something. There's some part of us that wants to say, they in the NFT world, they call it bragging rights. In fact, that's the biggest thing. They say, why does somebody want to own this? Because I have bragging rights. I spent $1 million for that piece of art, so I can brag about that. Maybe or certainly that's a portion of it. But I think what we're forgetting about is this giving economy, which is in our hearts. You know, the Patreon model. If you've not heard of Patreon, it's so you can. I mean, you look at any of the artists in history, including Casanova. He had a patron. He had he was in Castle Waldenstein, whatever, writing 11 years. He wrote his memoirs because the count that owned that said, you know what, I want to support you so you can do this kind of thing. You know, we've always had patrons of the art, the Medici.
And not only that, but we've always hung and exhibited our greatest art pieces in public libraries. So it's kind of like saying, Casanova, I'll fund you while you do your writing here, because I believe in the very thing that you do when you're unencumbered by personal burdens is that you give life and meaning to me and to others. Like, it's fundamentally makes my days less dry, more beautiful, that there's someone in the world doing this like you. So not only am I going to patron you and fund you, not that I want all your work for myself, but for the good of human, what am I going to do with a masterpiece for myself?
That's right.
I'm going to put it here so that everyone can see it. Because some people are like, well, you got the digital art, then you can keep it. You could be the only one with a book, right? I could be J.K. Rowling, write an NFT and sell it for $100 million, and only one person can ever read the final secret installment of the Harry Potter series,
Chapter 88.
But it's more fun actually to exhibit that. So yeah, you can actually go on my website and read the same thing for free. But over here, there is a proud owner who feels proud that they
and especially if the proud owner is the one, if the one that released it. So I bought it for $1 million from J.K. Rowling, but out of my sense of not benevolence, but my sense of pride, I guess, or something, I'm going to share it with the world. I own it, but here you go. There's something in that has a lot of appeal. It's no different than people. Imagine how many artworks you've seen in the Louvre or different places that have been donated by a family or a woman. You know, she bestowed it upon. You know, I want to give this to they give it.
So, yeah. So there's a self story of doing a public deed.
So yeah, it's something that's served in you by giving that, because it could be on your wall. But I could also give it to the National History Museum, because it has value to more people than can never see it just looking at my wall. And there's something in us that has that need to share in that way. It's just sharing type of, and yeah, it's not been fully explored, I don't think, but it's real.
It's very good to get curious about this mindset. Why would somebody want to own a piece of digital art, which one, everyone else can copy, and two, you might ultimately give away for free? Because if you understand that mindset, it's going to unlock a lot of things. The initial thing about this thing is judgment, right? It's like, what are these kind of people doing online now? That's totally weird. It's not right. They're just making a bubble because they're riding off this crypto high. It's snake oil, but there's to look into the heart of the motivation of it. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, actually. The motivation fascinates me.
To get the mindset is kind of like, to get the mindset of a high philanthropist or art collector is a conceptual stretch from the kind of person who's, hustling 40, 50 hours a week just to get their daily bread.
Yeah,
and thinking into that dimension to try and understand the worldview behind a purchase decision like this. What an activity.
The motivation behind it is the most interesting and fascinating thing. I think that all I'm trying to understand at all in the last few years is motivation. As we've talked many times about this, like why would someone give a piece of artwork to a museum, even anonymously, rather than selling it at auction? And why would they do that? What is the motivation behind that? And the cynical ones of us will say, well, it's a tax write-off. They did it as a tax, or whatever. And I don't buy it. There's something else that's steeped in our nature that wants to, and we're not altruistic. I don't believe in altruism, like pure altruism. I think there's always something that we're trying to retain in ourselves. Even the guy, who jumps on the grenade in World War II, and the grenade falls, you know, without thinking, he jumps on the grenade to sacrifice his life to save his friends. We think that that's the ultimate sacrifice. That's pure altruism. I still don't think it is. I think it's, and I don't know what it is, but there's still something in it for him that made him do that, or it's just something in it. Strange, and I say that, right? Because I can't back it up.
Yeah, I'm getting the images of the Thin Red Line now, where the guy did exactly that. Like, he actually fucked up his own grenade and he ended up jumping on it and killing himself to save his buddies. But I think it's maybe something like an honorable death, or in the story of arts, that there's something about like dignity or honor, or the word I'm really loving wrestling at the moment is right relationship. There's a sense of like, yeah, I can go to bed feeling completely.
This feels like it's aligned, yeah.
In the world, yeah. Like it is meant to be. I'm in right relationship with this entire process, and I think that gives us a peace in our heart that's unparalleled.
Yeah, I can go to my rest. Yeah.
Maybe I did something that was like altruistic or seemed like it benefited other people other than me and left me in a sense of deficit, but I ended up in a right relationship, which is a spiritual, like a spiritual selfishness, a spiritual way of ending up in alignment with oneself, even though the outer circumstances might have suffered for the decision.
Correct.
Maybe.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. Strange, huh? Yeah. These are the kind of things I'm fascinated by. Motivation. Why this rather than that? Why do we do this rather than that? Why are we so driven down this path rather than that one?
So with the NFTs, essentially an authenticated certificate of ownership of a digital good, which the entire world might have a copy of on their hard drive, but you're the owner and you spend millions on it, or the hundreds or thousands. What personal moves have you been considering making, either as a buyer investor in NFTs or as a creator who may possibly mint
well,
one
I'm
of
trying
your
to
own
understand how
pieces?
you can my art is writing, and yours is too.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think, how do you, is that a digital thing? Well, obviously it can be, right? So I'm trying to explore how you can take that and marry that with the concept of non-fungibility. How do you make a piece of writing, say a poem that you wrote or an essay that you wrote, how do you make it unique so that it's not tradable with anything else? Well, it obviously, because it has its own theme and message and tone. So there is only one, but everybody can have a copy. So it is basically identical to a JPEG, right? It's identical. It's like
text file, lightest.
It's a text file, and it's the original one.
Lightest thing on the internet.
Yeah, and you put your digital thumbprint on it and say, yeah, I did that. And now everybody has a copy of it. I don't know, because what would be attractive to own? Is there an exclusive element to a piece of writing? There is if you only show it to a few. So if I wrote a manuscript, or let's say I wrote an essay, and I said, I'm going to mint this, which is the terminology, mint it, as an NFT that only 10 people are ever going to have access to, and make 10 digital copies of this. Jordan buys one for $10. Albert buys one for $20, etc. And all 10 sell, and they're only seen by 10 people. You could say that there's an exclusivity there, and a point of pride for these people, etc. And they have a direct connection to me because I made 10, and it's a limited supply, so they have a piece of these 10. Now, one of those people, say Albert, could distribute it to the rest of the world. He could post on his website, everybody scrapes it, says, oh, I got this 2 of 10 thing from essay from Zan Perrion, so we're all reading it. But I don't think it. So exclusivity makes an attractive element. But what about? I'm trying to understand how you would take a piece of writing and make it interesting on that type of level. And even I've talked about it. I don't know completely. I have some ideas, and without getting into the technical details too much, because because it's a smart contract, an NFT based on the Ethereum blockchain, so it can actually do anything that you program it to do. It's a Turing complete programming language. So you could say that I'm going to write this essay, sell 10 copies, and it self-destructs, for instance, in 10 years. So you get to own this. You can sell it, and after 10 years, it self-destructs. Or after it's sold 18 times, it disappears. You know, I mean, there's copies of it, but the original one, the tokenized one, disappears. You could do all kinds of interesting things. That's kind of fun. Imagine if J.K. Rowling put out an essay and said, there's only one copy of this, and the only person that's ever seen it is me. Me is the author. The only one that's ever seen it is me. However, I'm going to mint it as an NFT, and one other person in the world is going to buy it and have access to eyes on this manuscript. Nobody else can see it. An essay. That's person could then turn around. So now there's two people who have ever seen it. There's potential value in that because it's fun and it's exclusive. And so, but the person that bought it can now turn around and sell it to Albert. So 3 people have laid their eyes on it. He sells it for a premium, for instance, because it's exclusive. And Albert could distribute it to the world. Somebody could break that chain. But I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'm scratching my head on the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's something that's fun in it.
Yeah, I'm pretty enamored in the idea of like, I'm going to put my essay online. 10 people could buy it, 20 people could buy it. Sure, you could copy it, but they're going to self-destruct. Or I put my essays online and something happens, mysterious thing. I think it's it's good for creating a lot of fun, like, because a lot of this NFT world revolves around the drop and the initial auction for the piece. So there's all kinds of ways that you can make it more entertaining. It just like creates some real excitement and hype around your launches with your particular fan base.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the essence.
Different.
That's the essence of NFTs. And then the other thing that's hit the world is this concept, which is Clubhouse, which is right now it's an Apple only, iOS only app that has taken a lot of people are quite enamored by it. It's basically, I don't know how to describe it. It's Zoom without the videos, which everybody knows what Zoom is nowadays. So I can say that without describing it. It's, you create a room, a Clubhouse room, and it can be, based on ours Amorata. So I could create it, and you could be my co-lead in it, and we're the moderators of the room. And you have 200 people join, and you have a conversation about something, and it's just audio only. There's a stage, you bring people up or put them down. And for some reason, because all of the history of social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I've not really been active. It's just something that just doesn't really catch my fancy. But for some reason, Clubhouse, because of the spontaneity of it, because of the non-having to give everybody a link, like Zoom, everybody has a link, everybody has to have a scheduled time. You can do a pop-up room that says, I'm going to hang out with Jordan and take questions for the next 20 minutes or whatever. And there's something about it that, and also you can be like doing the dishes and just listening in on it's like, it's better than a podcast. Well, better, I don't know, but there's something to it that really has appeal to my spirit and way I operate. I don't know why.
Right. So you've been spending a lot of time on that.
Yeah, because I'll tell you this too, Jordan. It's like when we're trying to understand, things like NFTs and this new digital culture, I've never seen a greater learning tool in a compressed and faster, efficient way than Clubhouse ever. If I wanted to learn about NFTs, I could watch YouTube videos, I could read blog articles, I could buy books on it, I could go to lectures, I could go to weekend intensive, I could go to, et cetera. And none of it compares to the speed and the efficiency that you get from sitting in with, because Clubhouse is the great equalizer. Everybody, The famous people who are you know, millionaires because of NFTs are sitting with the random people like me, the little people like me, and it's a great equalizer, and they're sharing the ideas because it's an open conversation. And it's faster than if you watch YouTube videos, because you've got to go through, you know, subscribe here, and faster than if you read an article, because here's the introduction to my article, and here's what I'm going to say, and then here's the, and you know, in articles you have to skim nowadays, you know, because so it's just super fast and super dialed into the directly to everybody who's interested in that space is in the conversation equally at the same time. So there's something about it that just fascinates me. And so I'm using it as a learning tool.
Yeah, I see that as like a university for all these emergent new ideas, which are actually quite complex if you come into them.
Yes, and you can ask the professor.
Understand an NFT, right?
Yeah, the guy who invented the idea of dark matter, for instance, who, you know, he's there, and you can inquire, and you can hear how he came up with it, and somebody can ask a question that you learn from, so that's you're all in the same room, and it feels like you're in the same room, and it's robust in some way that I don't know why it's different than other things. You could do the same thing with Zoom, but it seems like you have to set it up. Then you have to everybody get prepared for this conversation on Zoom, you know. Or you couldn't do it in a text-based, because it's too, you know, like a text-based room of chatting. Anyway, it's I'm an advocate for it.
So and then the third thing that you've been into, which you got me into more recently, is BitClout.
I apologize. BitClout
it was an adult decision. I went into this commitment with my eyes open.
BitClout, I would say, most closely resembles Twitter, but it is monetized. In other words, every person on there has a creator coin. So if you join it, you got a Jordan coin. I join, I get a Zan coin. And as a creator, you're creating content and putting out interesting things, or maybe funny things. And people say, you know, I like what Jordan posted. So they can like it, or they can give you a diamond, which is new, which is a small piece of money, internal money, or they can buy your coin. So I can buy $100 equivalent of BitClout, it's called, of Jordan coin. And the value of everybody who owns your coin goes up, because another $100 came into your wallet, came into your pocket, and increases. And so it's basically saying, it's Patreon and Twitter mixed together. I like this artist. I like what he's posting. I'm going to buy $10. I'm going to buy $1 of Jordan. And it increases your quote unquote value. And so there's a reason behind it. There's a, as opposed to likes on Instagram or Twitter. And now the dystopian part of it, which is very, very potential and possible, is the idea that, you know, on Instagram, if you put, you know, you have a lot of these young people that put up a picture and they only get 300 likes. And the one they put up 2 days ago got 800 likes. Something in them gets heartbroken and like feels like I'm doing something wrong. And they have an existential angst. They have an angst-ridden anxiety attack because of it. And it's very real, to the point where there's, you know, even talk that there's a suicidal element to all these likes and not liked, and then people don't like you anymore. So imagine the equivalent if there's a real dollar value attached to it, as opposed to just likes. Imagine, you know, if you think your girlfriend is pissed off at you because you liked a model on Instagram, imagine if you bought her.
You put $1,000 into her coin, right? Who are you invested in lately?
So I don't understand how it's going to affect us societally, but I know it is going to affect us societally, and it's not going to go backwards. There's no longer going to be a Facebook or Twitter going forward. I mean, it's going to be around for a while, obviously, but there's never going to be another Facebook type of engine built, because that's centralized. And now I can, you know, put an algorithm to choose what you get to view, Jordan. And I'm becoming a billionaire because your content, you get it, you know, you're getting nothing in return except for, you know, sharing your information. So, but I can also now censor you. And so it's very centralized and very top down and very stomping around energy. And that's gone. Those are gone. That'll never exist again because of decentralization in the blockchain. So this BitClout is Twitter decentralized. There's no company that owns it. There's no registered trademark. BitClout's not a trademark. It's just developers who develop. There's no company. And they just put up this protocol basically that people are building onto, and they're building, so there is no top-down development.
There's no cancel culture on it. There's no deplatforming if you say things that certain entities and institutions don't like. So it's really the Wild West in terms of free speech.
Correct.
And that seems like it's safeguarded in the very design of the thing. So yeah, I mean that could be colossal bomb of people of all interests going into that kind of space. I think what's really interesting in this decentralized conversation is like we might not have another generation of Zuckerbergs, right? Because people have seen through the dark side of centralized ownership of social media and the way that they monetize your attention, and basically your profile and the information is handed over to these big kind of all-seeing eyes. And now everything's live on the blockchain, which means I mean, the artists are having a ball, right? It's like, wow, I'm a content creator, and now I'm not going to be stymied by these middlemen. I get to put stuff out directly to my fans and then profit directly in that, in terms of coin price, in terms of the way that the NFT models is going. So it seems like it gives a massive financial impetus to artists, which could be massive. Like, because if you think of someone who's 22 years old and watching this podcast, are thinking, wow, like, I might go to do a master's, thinking about doing an MBA and going into the corporate life. But if I see for myself a way that I could be well remunerated by following my artistic passions, I might as well go and do that. And I know artists already that have sold some NFTs, and they're standing on sovereign feet, much more than depending on a particular old school hierarchy of be accepted into this circle or this kind of museum to show my work. Now all of work is being shown. And yeah, I mean, wow, the very model of this could turn into a greater proliferation of the arts and greater instance of people following their passions in life, which this whole podcast is about, which is why I'm personally excited by that. I think some of the more dystopian elements are in this culture where even the Zuckerbergs are taken out of the equation. Who rises to the top as the next generation of influencer within all of this?
Well, it's the creators, it's the artists that rise to the top.
Right. And I think there has to be creators, of course, that rise to the top, but there also has to be curators, which is if I go into BitClout and I'm looking for someone good to follow, how do I find them in this swath of different options? Or how do I find good NFT artwork when I open something like OpenSea, and anyone who's just like, hey, I wonder if I could just put an audio recording of my dog farting, mint an NFT of it.
Where do I buy that, Jordan?
When eBay came out, my mum went on here. I'm surprised by my basically older generation of my family are well into the 19th century. They were born, right? My mum went onto eBay within the first few months of eBay coming out, and she took my granddad's old dentures, his old false teeth, and she wrote some sales copy basically saying, yeah, false teeth for sale. And the copy was one elderly owner, boxed and well taken care of. And she went on this riff of basically making a joke for these dentures, thinking, no one's going to buy a pair of old man's dentures. This is the most disgusting thing in the world. But she made fun out of it. She sold these dentures for, I don't know how much money. It was like 50, 60 quid, you know, approaching $100 or something like that, just because they bought into the joke of the sales copy, right? So I think there's people left, right, and center minting NFTs and putting all kinds of stuff out into
there's all kinds of everything.
Cosmos. Yeah. Right. So how then do you navigate that to try and find your gold? And I think,
you're still going to have curators.
Top 10 lists. Yeah.
But it's different than a gatekeeper, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it's just goes back to the same thing, which is a silo of here's what's good, here's what's bad. You know, it goes back to everything that, you know, goes back to Immanuel Kant, you know, talks about what is taste, what is good taste, what is in good taste, which is a constant bombardment. And somebody has to decide that. If I decide right now I'm going to become a digital artist, I've never done a piece of it in my life. Nobody has an inkling that I do digital art, and I created a digital piece of masterpiece that I like. Who's going to find it? You're right. I have to go through some channel, OpenSea.io or something, and put it up there. They've built a platform, a marketplace that you can put that digital ware on a table and people can see it. Do I build my own table, you know, my own website, and who's going to find it? Who's going to see it? So you still have to go through channels that are siloed into
tastemakers,
and so then you have somebody overriding it saying
connoisseurs,
saying this dog farting is good and your digital thing is not good. Somebody decides that.
Right.
So can you get away from it? But the good thing is the financial incentive goes direct. So right now, if I sell a piece of art, I put it up in a gallery. The gallery owner and the agents and the auction house, et cetera, whatever, they take all their pieces off that, and ultimately I get a portion of it with an NFT in essence, except for maybe the transaction fees on the blockchain, which is a few dollars. Albert buys my piece of digital art. I get it directly to me. I don't have to pay the middleman. I don't have to share it with an agent, I think. So that's why the artists, especially musicians have got a bad rap nowadays, you know, ever since the record companies and these large top 5 media companies that own all the music, there's only a few that make it really into the big stratosphere, and then the rest just toil, and they have to sell t-shirts, and they have to sell frisbees, and they have to, you know, go on tour. Otherwise it's difficult to make money from their music itself. But now somehow this is you don't need those middlemen, like you said. You don't need the music company at all anymore. You don't need it. That musician can distribute it to all of its all the fans, the music, and get 100% of the revenue. So now people still need to know about this musician. So you have to, I don't get it, but it's really a huge shift, as big as anything we've seen in music and art and artistic expression, as big as anything we've ever seen. So it's fascinating to me.
If I'm to wrap all this up and then just state kind of where we are in the context of this podcast, I think a big reason why we didn't come together and have a conversation over the last 3 months is because these absolute atomic bombs of new technology have landed.
That's
you
correct.
And I have both been scrambling to make sense of what actually is going on. What does this mean? How do I use it? Who's in the space? How can I kind of update my wisdom, which is evolving on a daily basis? And therefore, how might I use this? Not how we are using it. Apart from like watching, participating,
right.
Neither of us have kind of formulated a grand strategy or put anything out there in terms of our art, but we might. I'm certainly riding around on my bike, all kinds of ideas are coming. This is something I might do, but then I'm waiting for this bit of technology and what's possible within our particular team of building. But I'm flirting with different ideas and like what content would I therefore make? I mean, as an artist, it's quite interesting. Like what content would I therefore make if the entire means of production, distribution, and remuneration are now different?
That's correct.
Because the novel, the great thing about the novel was, yeah, I want to buy something to read, but I don't want my reading to end. I want to be going for at least a week because I've got all these evenings by the fireplace and the candlelight. I need something to entertain my brain. So the novel comes, you can't have a short story be read in a night. It needs to be a week long. And then I can swap it with someone, or there I can go and buy another thing. Right. But as soon as the TV comes along, it decimates all of that. So people are writing novels because we've got this mental construct of, yeah, that's a great thing to create. Does it have any relevance in this day and age anymore? But what other kinds of storytelling then become
what else can be emerging?
Valuable, possible, right?
Yeah. And, you know, and sorry, go ahead, Jordan. I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah. So I'm flirting with all of these things in my mind. And to bring it all together, it's like, okay, how are we going to make sense? 2020 came, we struggle to make sense of that. 2021 has come with this whole new emergent technology, and it's like, right, the new paradigm is landing, it's clarifying, the rubble is settling, and we can see where we are now. This whole notion of changing the form of production distribution of the arts is definitely technological. All the stuff that's making big bucks in the NFT is like, that's never going to exist in an analog world. Like the futuristic surrealism that is part of this art, like the Beeple stuff, is very clearly, it's got its own genre, right? There was surrealism, impressionism. Now we've got, I think, the very kind of art that is best and only really produced through a computer. Like that's all coming to the fore. That this new artistic movement is manifesting. We're trying to keep abreast of the early edge of that. And that takes some engagement. It's like, wow, the paradigm has shifted.
Yeah. And
let's make sense of it. How do we play?
Not only just learn about it and wonder how we can use it for our future, but how do we embed it? Because I'm writing a book on art and creativity. How can I write that book prior to this? How could I how could I have put something out that didn't have this embedded in it, this new consciousness? I realize now, this is something that has to be incorporated into the work. Otherwise it missed the mark. I'm trying to write about motivation, creativity, how there's nothing new under the sun. And yet all this new stuff. So it has to be embedded. Yeah. And there's been a perfect storm in these last 2 years of coronavirus, which decentralized us. We're decentralized from our workspaces now. Think of it. It's all decentralization. So instead of everybody gathering in meeting rooms and gathering at the office, they're decentralized and continuing that work. So it's a distributed workforce now, and that's never going to change. There's no, right?
We're decentralizing our ideology.
That's right.
So the great broadcasting corporations and the red versus blue, left or right kind of dichotomy, we're decentralized from a very comfortable kind of political equation. We're all in these little tribes around the outside. Right.
And the decentralized model is hit the workforce. And you can bet that I remember back, 25 years ago when I was in the corporate world, 30 years ago, and I was the IT guy. I was always been a computer guy, right? So I was the head of the IT, and I had a smoking computer at home back then, a Pentium 286 or whatever those things were. But I had a company bought computer at home so I could monitor and maintain the systems remotely from home. And I would sit there thinking, why do I go to work on Monday morning? Wait a minute, because I'm 100% self-contained here. I can do everything I was going to do in my office space today here remotely from my home. And I would mention it to my company, and they'd say, no, you have to be you have to be here. You have to be present. So, and so the companies have this workforce that was built up with office space, lunch breaks, human resources, all this kind of stuff. And so what they told us back then, maybe it was more true back then than it is now, but they can no longer hide behind that. They can no longer say, oh no, we need you here. We need you here from 9 to 5. They can no longer say that because that's proven to be that they can be perfectly fine without it. So companies can't use that hammer anymore. And the employees are going to say no. And employees are realizing, wait a minute, I don't have to live in San Francisco. That's going to cost me $2 million for like a one walk-up bedroom apartment. I can live in Colorado and still work for the same company, still do the same thing. So this decentralization is this perfect storm of this coronavirus lockdown that distributed everybody into their homes, et cetera. And the technology that was, I don't think you could have Clubhouse or you could have BitClout without Clubhouse, because BitClout has no centralization. It's no company. There's nobody to teach you how to do it. But in Clubhouse, there's been this army of volunteers that came up and said, Jordan, listen to my room for 4 hours. I will I will altruistically, I guess you could say, tell you how to do it right, and I'll onboard you. I'll teach you how to do it. And so this group of people on Clubhouse who are very BitClout enthusiasts are basically the sales marketing support of BitClout, and you would not have had it. You would not have had that surge and that interest in it if it wasn't for this. So all these things came together. NFTs made analog artists go, wait a minute, and they're all jumping on board into these new technologies, learning as fast as they can, because they, the smart ones are realizing this is where it's going, and it's not going back. Now, there's always going to be a need for analog experiences. For instance, the way I've said it is, there's basically a decade lost is the right word, shifted from analog to digital in the dating space. So for the last 10 years, I came up pre-internet. I had to straighten my tie, get Jordan to encourage me in a bar to go get a girl's phone number on a piece of paper or memorization or whatever. And that was my only recourse. I had to get up my nerve, look foolish, be nervous, sweaty palms, whatever, and go talk to her and try and get a number. I had to physically analogically approach. In the last 10 years, that has been superseded by Tinder and this online dating apps on your phone for 7-8 years, and then 2 years of lockdown. So we're not interacting. So there's an entire 10-year chunk of, a 20-year-old's life that they didn't get analog experiences in the world of women, for instance. So there's going to be a premium on learning this and relearning this. And I've never approached a woman since I was 18. There was Tinder, and then lockdown. Except, I've only done it that way. There's going to be a premium on analog experiences, including art. So there's still going to be a desire for somebody to own that modern day Picasso's piece of art that that she did with acrylic, and there's something in it. I want it in my home, and I want to hold that, and I want to look at that and say, I bought that from the artist, supported the artist. So that's not going away. So it's not like you turn your back on this. In fact, there's going to be a premium on analog experiences because everything's going to go so digital that imagine 20 years from now, somebody who's painting in oils is going to be a premium. That's a rarity nowadays. And somebody who's actually approaching and trying to take a girl on a date by, walks in the park and stuff is going to be a premium. So I have a lot of faith in all this. I have a lot of faith in the technology. I have a lot of faith in that we're not going to lose our humanity. We're not, the concept of being human. We still need a good pair of shoes. You can't digitalize that ever, no matter what. For the history of humans, from the earliest humans, they needed something to cover their feet so they didn't step on thorns and rocks. And that's never changed, and it never will change. You can't, we don't need shoes anymore because we digitalized it. So there's basic human needs that are, 3 meals a day. You can be a billionaire and you still eat the same amount of food. You still eat the same amount of food as anybody, and you don't need more. So those basic needs are not going to go away. And the connection with your beloved, and to have somebody to hold and to love you and to adore you and to honor you and to be proud of you. Those are never going to be, you can't digitalize those away. You cannot do it. There's still going to be, there's still a need for it. So there's still a need for great analog experiences and analog artists and analog conversations, But, you think of it, Jordan, I know I'm rambling on here. I have always pined for since I was little, you hear about these places on earth where artists would gather. And I've said it many times, and probably on this podcast too, where, in the 1890s, all the artists went to Paris and looked over each other's shoulder what they're painting and copied each other's ideas and snuck around and became friends and drank little coffees together. And it created a movement we called the Impressionist movement, and then abstractism and Georges Braque and Picasso came up with, Cubism and stuff like that. And then in the 20s, we had the writers. which is near and dear to my heart, the Fitzgeralds and Hemingways and the Gertrude Stein and James Joyce were all hobnobbing together. A young writer, I remember this guy from Canada, he was 20 years old, and he wrote an essay how he was back in those days, and he heard about these writers, and he went from Canada on a ship over to Paris, and his whole idea, and he wrote about his experience. He would go to the cafes that they were rumored to be, and there's James Joyce, and he would sit there and try and lean into it and try and make an introduction and try and, until he got part of this writer's circle, and he was invited to Gertrude Stein's house, who was the mother hen of it all. And these fascinating gathering points on earth that have drawn artists, you know, the grand tour that in the early 1800s, that if you're an English gentleman like you are,
right,
it was unheard of that you didn't go on the grand tour. You go to Venice, you go to, you know, Greece and stuff like that, and you do a tour of the classic arts and stuff, and Byron and all these guys, right? So those were physical pilgrimages to something that created artistic movements. The Beat Generation, same thing. Andy Warhol's Factory. It was like we have a knowledge of the Factory and all those people that came out of that because they collected and colluded. And so I've always been, you know, nostalgically pining for a place on earth like that, trying to create it myself with, you know, Casa Amorata, you know, my own thing. And this seems like we're so even further out. This is really even more decentralized than that kind of thing. But there's something in me that doesn't despair and think we're losing something, because I think we're not going to lose it. I think the decentralization may, I mean, I've always said that social media has made us so connected, but we're so disconnected because we don't gather together anymore. And, you know, the big thing about ours and Amorata is we put these gatherings together, and the need for that's not going to go away. So I still think there's going to be places where we analog gather. So I'm optimistic on both fronts, the digital side, analog side. That was a long rant.
Yeah, wow. I'm so fired up listening to you, that last part of that, and the vision for the Zan and Amorata and the need to gather, like, wow. And yeah, I think the age of decentralization sums up so much of it. I'm hoping, I think my optimism on the decentralization front is that there's such a mass of people becoming active because certain entry points and barriers, conceptual barriers, practical barriers to playing this game. I'm a creator, I'm an artist, I'm going to try because my fear of going penniless is less. I'm going to have a punt at this, like, could mean that more people in more corners of the globe, like there's much more of a pluralized production and creativity, like a renaissance in a way.
Right.
Perhaps hoping that that can happen. The other thing, when you're talking about Paris, I'm like, this confluence of events that's happened over the last year, which is one, there's new art forms and delivery systems and mediums to get excited about in the first place. So that's like, okay, there's new conversations, like, wow, NFT, what's that all about? Like,
yeah.
So there's a new impulse and energy coming through. And then the lockdown and the having been forcibly decentralized for so long, I think it's like that notion of polarity. You get stretched so far in the way of being atomized and separate that as soon as the restrictions come down and the airways are open, it's like, no, my longing, but by the way, it just so happened that I've got a bit of Bitcoin in the account and I can fly anywhere. And, you know, a lot of people that are in the kind of tech savvy space have made a bit of cash on crypto. And it's like, wow, as soon as that, the restrictions are lifted, boom, I want to go and centralize myself somewhere in the world. Maybe we're ripe for a kind of a moment of crypto centralization where it's like, I want to go and hang out with real people in a room again. I want to have my clubhouse experience in analog flesh, because I think there is some of the things that, like, the biggest takeaways I get when I read into Paris in the 1920s is actually the level of competition. You don't imagine that writers have so much competition, but they were a fierce bunch. To define one's style and to be seen as preeminent in this world where being the writer, it's not like today where it's, oh, you're a writer, great, but you know, you could also be a movie director or an actor or one of a million things that's going to get your light seen in a much more strident, bright, immediate way, right? To actually be a constructor of novels is a slow path to being seen. And then you're not going to get seen in your brilliance by that many people, because it's not you're not a movie director. It's
That's
like
right.
the immediacy as a movie is so much bigger than what you can get through a novel. What am I saying? People are going to want to meet and get together.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, and you know, we think, well, we don't want this sudden change in technology and stuff like that, but you said a good example, movie directing. 200 years ago, the concept of artistic expression in a video form didn't exist on Earth. There was plays, but that's not the same thing. To capture something in a moving picture type of way, that's a new technology that we've all embraced, a new art form, you know? And the novel in its novel form is only 500 years old. Before that, there was sagas, and there was, you know, the tales of Beowulf, and, you know, and handed down. But the novel, you know, was it Defoe or Don Quixote? It's probably one of the first recognized novel in fictional form, you know, where it has an opening, a middle crisis, and then a ending sort of thing. So everything's shifting and changing, and we can't decry it. We can't despair. It's just new. Imagine, like, people say, well, you're wasting so much time because you're on Clubhouse and bitclout, but I don't look at it like a waste of time. They say you could be writing, which I could say it to myself. Oh man, I'm beating myself up because I should be writing my book. I spent 3 months immersed in this, right?
As many artists do.
That's what the artists do. Oh yeah, what a waste of time. And I got to detox myself from this digital stuff and get offline and turn off my internet and turn off. And you know what? But I look at it and I have a completely different perspective. If I wanted to take a course in, say, JavaScript programming, and I signed up for a 3-week course and I paid money for that course, and I had to leave my home to go to this place to take this course, nobody, including me, would say, what a waste of time. They would, you should be writing your book. Everyone would recognize that that's a valid point of learning. And that's the way I look at these paradigms or these things. Can you imagine living in Florence in the 1400s and all these artists and all this energy of this Renaissance was being blossoming, and you weren't part of it? You were just kind of like sweeping the street and you didn't care? Because we really care a lot about that, that part of, that history of Florence right now. And so it's kind of the same thing. I feel like I want to be part of this. I want to see it blossom and grow. I want to see it be born. I want to say that I was there. I rubbed shoulders with the Jordans of the world who were having the same conversation. We were all figuring it out at the beginning, And so that's how I look at it. It's like, I want to be part of this too. I want to see it. I want to see what's happening on the earth, because it's big in China. It's big in Russia. It's big in Australia. It's big in North America. It's hitting all cultures at the same time. Everything's going digital. China is embracing it like incredibly so. So you want to see and feel and be part of that. So, when you're 80 years old, you look back and say, wow, that was a cultural shift. The history books are now writing about it, or the history digital tabs, whatever's going to have in the future. And I was there. I was part of that conversation. I had an idea that, that maybe, or we created an NFT space around writing that kind of helped to inform that culture. That's kind of cool.
All right, I got my final question, I think, for today.
Okay, because my voice is going.
I'm getting excited about it. I feel part of something just having this conversation. Yeah, like we're doing it right now. The thing you want, we're doing it right now.
There you go.
Podcast. So it's very clear. I think we were hazy last year, wondering, there must be a turning. Like there's something really is shifting. Geopolitics, the technological means, the mood of our age, and so on. Everything's shifting. This great swath of people are embracing new questions, and with quite some speed, new things are coming through. The whole notion of an NFT, I think, it was very, very tiny a year ago. Now you've got people with this $69 million sale of this piece.
Sotheby's.
Right. So the new turning is in motion. The technological paradigm of art creation is in motion. This is like the first generation. You've got the pre-2000s. They want their Elvis guitar. You've got your post-2000s. They want their NFT tweet, bastardizing the whole thing. But I hope you get the basic picture that I'm trying to draw. I think my question is, if as we go into this new turning, we also go into a new international mood. And I wonder, as the medium and the style of artistic expression is able to change and is changing, and the energy of it is, what do you see as some of the important feeling tones, messages, maybe propaganda plays in a way, but like what might be some of the human or soul expression that comes through these new arts that will come to define this age, like early 2020s?
Well, I think that there's I mean, I look at Clubhouse as this example. There's entire volumes of people having a conversation in Russia on Clubhouse in Russian rooms, and us in the English-speaking worlds, and these rooms collide. These rooms come together, and in a translated space that are really excited because we're all talking on a peer level that isn't encroached on by government, isn't told by the Twitters of the world, you can have this speech and not this speech, you can talk about this. So I feel a real optimism. And I think even though we're in this pessimistic, antagonistic, aggressive society, political discord, and the whole thing, I kind of have a feeling that, and certainly this lockdown of 2 years, I kind of can't help feeling that there's going to be an artistic optimism coming up, arising out of it, out of the turmoil. If you look back 100 years ago, say to 1910, and you ask the people to draw a picture of the future, without fail, and even up into the 50s, if you ask the people in the 50s, draw a picture of the future, what is it going to look like? They would show this family of the future in this weird, oval shaped clothes, and sky rises and flying cars, and these modern cities of towers and glass and flying things, elements and stuff like that, and a real optimistic future. It was what we called futuristic back then. Throughout the World War II and World War I and all that kind of stuff, you asked about the future, and they had this real optimistic outlook. The pictures they would paint and was more utopian than what existed. And now, if in the last generation or so, you ask them to paint a picture of the future, and it's apocalyptic. It's all Walking Dead and The Road by McCarthy, and the few stragglers left on Earth. It's very apocalyptic and destructive and destroyed. And we say, well, that's because the malingering effect of the Cold War and the nuclear possibility. But there's a real pessimistic outlook, painting picture of the future. It's going to be all the movies, everything. It's like, here's the future. One man left to with his little kid by his side to go and, fight off the hordes and find food somewhere and go to where the radio signal said there's a civilization over there. I'm gonna go find it. And it's very dystopian. And so there's no optimistic future in this kind of thing, but I think that's going to be recovered.
Right.
Like we talk about climate change and how distraught the world is because of climate change. I'm not distraught at all. And not because I'm not aware, but because I do believe in that human ingenuity and technology and science will solve it when it gets to the point of real dire, and people say it is already, but I think that there will be solutions come out of the human mind that will solve it. That's my optimism. I really do. Not me, because I don't know how to do this kind of stuff, but others smarter than me are going to you get these post 2000 kids, and they're digital. They're born digitally. They're born with ones and zeros in their blood. We're not. And so they're going to, and you know, there's this concept of knowledge increasing from birth on. I mean, by that I mean, if you took a child from 0 to 10 years old now compared to 500 years ago, the child today would be so much more knowledgeable and emotionally knowledgeable and intellectually knowledgeable and full of potential energy, intellectual energy than you could with a kid from 500 years ago, just because of the collective unconscious is.
Or 20 years ago.
Or 20 years
like
ago.
You get directly in the elevator of consciousness and just go up pretty quickly because of the conversation that's around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the air. It's in the ether. It's not even in, you don't even have to watch television, be on YouTube. You could take kids who are raised in the forest and homeschooled and, by a sheltered type of, and those kids are still smarter than they were 30 years ago. They will come out of that like way more aware instantly. You could take a kid who's never seen a computer in his life and at 15 years old, put him in front of one, and this modern kid will come, it'll be just, it's natural. It's in the air. It's in the ether.
Right. And you think that will come through the art? Like,
I think so.
Particularly a lot of this artwork that's coming through digital medium, there'll be a kind of future techno utopia.
For sure. When all those 1900ers die off, those curmudgeons, those Luddites, certainly something bright is going to come out of it. I really think that. I mean, not going to solve all the world's wars and problems, but I think artistically, we've explored everything we can towards the level of disturbance and absurdism in art and architecture. We've shocked the world. We've shocked everybody. Art is all shock, and I think there's, as things do, there's going to be a shift back to classicism, maybe. Just like in the 1800s, there was a shift back to they rediscovered classicism, and the Roman art and the Greek art, and they incorporated it into became the Orientalists and stuff. So I think there's going to something, I don't know what, but we're watching it being born, and that's why I'm rocking. I'm excited, and you're excited. And NFTs, I don't know. And bitclout might be something that is a social experiment, a modern social experiment that crashes spectacularly, and we realize, no, it's Lord of the Flies. It didn't work. Because right now you listen to the conversation on Clubhouse, and you can hear the elements of, 2,600 years ago is when we started to form this modern Western society in ancient Greece, and the idea of democracy and the idea of the agora and sitting at and learning together and sharing ideas, and the Socratic method of dialogue and discourse and logic was invented, in the Western society 2,600 years ago. We had the Magna Carta, which talked about the rights of humans, the rights of the individual, and individualism started basically back then, and then the Renaissance and all this kind of stuff, and the conversations that you're hearing in the digital space right now are all of those 2,600 years compressed into like, well, there's no hierarchy. How do we govern? Who makes the decision? How do we curate? Like we talked earlier, and everybody's scratching their heads, and it's all, and it could end up Lord of the Flies, where we're all like, with our stick and piggy. It could be that, and it destroys. But at least I want to be part of it. I want to see it. I want to watch that development. I want to, and if it destroys spectacularly, maybe it destroys society. Maybe it's so dystopian that, but it is, you can't wish it away. So as long as it is, if there was an apocalypse or an asteroid come to the earth, I want to be there. Where would I stand? Where do I want to see this thing? I want to know. So
well, I'm blown away by your analogy of ancient Greece, and actually like with such radical change in the technologies that we've got to connect, and the structures and the hierarchies and the way that people are going to work together. like the opportunity for renegotiation for who and how we do certain things together, species wide, is yeah. I mean, we could be sat at the moment.
It's uncharted. It's never been in history before, Jordan.
Moment, yeah. So like in the very first days when someone came back from Eleusis with the insight of democracy, we're going to sit around and do this. Everyone's going to have a vote, and we're going to implement this over a 20-year period and see how it sticks. As if we might be in an age where that is happening right now in some clubhouse room of some people that just came back from some breath work or some micro dosing, and they're sat around about how do we bring together everybody in a new form of crypto governance and work together to build launch pads for the next generation of internet, which is going to shape everything. How do we sit together? How do we be together? And we're kind of like, I don't know, picking our noses in Indonesia and Romania or wherever you are when you're watching this, oblivious to the future shaping conversation that's actually happening right now.
Oblivious to the groundswell, oblivious to the momentous thing that's happening on Earth. It's momentous. It is, you can't put the cat back in the bag. New democracy or new forms of government, new forms of consensus. Because, you know, this decentralization is trustless. In other words, no parties need to be trusted. You can still have a secure thing. I won't get into all those details, but we've never had this. We've always had hierarchy and caste systems and, you know, this kind of stuff. So, I mean, we could keep going forever, Jordan, but maybe we better quit it because my voice is going. But I am optimistic in the digital space and the analog space that we're watching something that is a cultural, you know, it's cliche to say nowadays, but it is a renaissance. It is as vital as anything that's hit humanity. It's that big. And I don't know what that means. And I don't know how to say it other than that generalization. I can't give specifics. And if somebody said, well, why? I don't know. I just think so. So I would like to know everybody's thoughts on this, you know, like bring it forth.
Comment below with your questions and your thoughts.
And, you know, imagine watching from our first one till now, how the conversation we've done what, 7 or 8 episodes since a year and a half.
So much has happened less than a year and a half.
So much has happened. It's like, it's shocking how much the world has changed. And imagine listening back to the very first one, to the second one, third one. It's all relevant. And nothing's outdated, but it was an inquiry that is still deepening and getting more, maybe it's getting more precise. I don't know. Or maybe it's getting more wild and woolly and we're even out of our, yeah. Cool, guys.
The viewers will let us
subscribe.
Know. Yeah. So let's wrap this up. I think I need to go and have some ramen at this new dirty Japanese place, guilty pleasure that we found down the road. Get my head around this a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. It's good. Fun conversation.
Maybe we have NFTs available to purchase.
Let's make this this video an NFT. Come on, guys. $1 million.
Highest bidder.
$1 million. Come on, you crypto multimillionaires. What is it to you? It's a few ether. It's not real money.
That's it.
You can't buy a Starbucks with it. Not yet.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cheers, Zan.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan.